1012, and it gives me 1,250 feet.
Announced the arrival of their flight from Los Angeles and Chicago.
Explosion.
And welcome, everybody, to this Monday, May 23rd, 2016 edition of T and Z Talk. We do want to quickly remind you before I get Richard Zombeck in on the act that we have a phone number that you can utilize, and you can leave a message, and whether it's appropriate or not, we'll find a way to use it on air. That number is 559-898-2551. That's 559-898-2551 or 559-TZ-TALK-1. I am the T, he is the Z. Joining me now is Huffington Post columnist and columnist for Liberals Unite, Richard Zombeck. And Z, a beautiful spring morning to you, my friend.
It is, and good morning to you, sir.
Hope you had a nice weekend. You know, we ended up only doing one show last week because for one reason or another, including a broken dryer and a flooded kitchen on your end, and just major dysfunction in my life on my end, we ended up getting one in, but we'll do much better this week. But, you know, it's interesting. You and I actually discussed this last week. You know, we occasionally miss some days, and yet not a whole lot changes while we're gone, and politically anyway, and that's kind of scary.
Like nothing.
Indeed, like nothing.
Nothing. I mean, you know, aside from the Egyptian airline thing, but the reactions are pretty much what you'd expect.
Yeah, I'm going to start off. We had pledged last week that we were going to do at least one bit every day that wasn't political. There is a viral video out there of a woman, I don't know if you saw it, I'm sure you did, of a woman buying a Chewbacca mask and putting it on in the car, recording it, and then laughing. Have you seen that?
Yes, I did.
All right. Well, now, here's the funny thing. The first time I saw it, it said this was seen 107 million times. And then the next time I saw it, Mother Jones had emailed it out, and theirs was 55 million. So, I got that after I got the first one. Well, it's up over 200 million views now, and I didn't even find it entertaining. So I'm not sure what it is about the simplicity of it, because all she does is it's a cool mask, I'll give you that. And I love the way that the mouth works on it. And listen, I don't think we're, giving away anything, because if 200 million views are attributed to it, enough people have seen it. But how? Why? Z, seriously, how the hell did that happen?
Because Donald Trump is a presidential candidate?
No.
It kind of explains the general intellect and interest.
Well, maybe the reason is because it's not Donald Trump. Maybe it's finally something that's not Donald Trump.
Maybe.
Just a suggestion, but I just found it astounding that it was so freaking popular, because I didn't really find it that funny. Now, maybe it's just me. Maybe you found it quite entertaining. I'm not speaking for you. But I think I know you well enough to know that it's not something that you were going to, start tweeting out or posting on Facebook, nor did I.
Was it really 200 million views?
Something like that now, yeah.
Which is like 2/3 of the population of this country?
Yeah.
Including infants?
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how she steamrolls this into a payday, because she will. And I'm sure she's going to be on the Ellen Show and on The View, and, she'll get she's going to get a couple hours of fame, not just 15 minutes. I just kind of scratched my head when I saw it, because all of the headlines were best video ever, and you'll know why as soon as you see it. And so I thought there was more. After it was over, I thought, I saw a truncated version. No. I don't mean to be cynical, and maybe it's a reflection of how complicated things are for me right now, but I didn't find it entertaining.
No, I'm with you.
Well, anyway, and I'm sure that there will be other non-political things that we'll get to today.
Maybe I've got a Chewbacca mask on right now. Maybe our listenership will go up.
Well, we need to record the video, because I don't think the audio owns it. Let me tell you, on Friday, as I was doing some stuff, I was actually doing some research and reading some articles. I had MSNBC on in the background, as you often do, and Donald Trump was speaking to the National Rifle Association. Now, I'm going to be honest, I didn't stop what I was doing and listen, but I did have it on, and I was listening to it. And at one point, I stopped, and he had said something about Hillary Clinton wanting to literally get rid of the Second Amendment. Well, that's a lie. I mean, that's just a lie. And so I did stop at that point, and I spent 5 minutes of my life that I'll never get back listening to him rail against her, and everything he had to say was a complete and utter freaking lie.
Well, I mean, and no exaggeration. I mean, every single thing he said.
Yeah. And I thought, well, I'm going to grab some of that audio, and I said, why? Why am I going to waste my time? And then I've got to listen to it again, and then I got to put you through it. I happen to care about you, so why would I want to put you through that?
And our listeners.
And our listeners. But it was a total fabrication of what she stands for, of what Democrats stand for. Listen, I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment. They exist for a reason.
Well, he actually accused her of wanting to abolish it.
I know, that's what I said.
Well, yeah. I mean, I know it's what you said. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, but it's the audacity. And then, you take a look at, I posted a story from Mother Jones this morning. They found another nationalist, a woman that's a racist, that's a proud racist, as one of his delegates. I don't know about you, and I'll let you speak to this, but we have such a big problem with racism in this country to begin with. Do we really want to promote? Forget about Donald Trump for a moment. Do we really want to promote people that are delegates to national conventions that are outwardly proudly, this woman's proudly a racist? I would think the answer to that question would be no, and I would think the Republican Party needs to stand up to that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and they won't. I mean, I don't know if you caught that article in the Washington Post about how fascism comes to a country.
Yes, it was and it was written by a conservative.
Yeah, it was actually a really good piece. And, what we're seeing that he points to, too, is the kowtowing from Republicans to Trump, hoping to curry his favor in order to get, cabinet positions in the future. And this is exactly the same kind of stuff. I mean, we played that clip of Lindsey Graham, who has been just railing on Donald Trump to the point where you and I actually started to like him.
Crucified. I literally nailed this guy to a wooden cross.
Yeah, and then he's on an interview with Bloomberg saying, well, I mean, he's got some kind of good ideas, and I can't really tell you what they are right now, but I would love to talk to him about it. Well, I do declare.
Well, and there was an article in The Hill this morning. I didn't post it and I didn't print it, but the headline reads, Graham, secretly telling conservatives to back Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. See, that's the reaction that you would expect.
Because here's the thing, right? Is a racist, lying, misogynistic xenophobe is better than Hillary Clinton any day. I mean, that's essentially what they're saying.
I had a conversation with a young white waitress day before yesterday, and she is a Donald Trump supporter. I asked her, or she had asked me who I was supporting in the presidential election. And so I said, well, I'm a Democrat. I didn't really give an answer. I just said I'm a Democrat. She goes, well, I'm a Democrat, but I'm supporting Donald Trump. I said, really, why? Well, he's not an insider. I mean, she was giving me Fox News bullet points, 3 or 4 of them, which I've heard, ad nauseum from lots of people. And so I said, you realize everything you just said to me is not true. And she said, oh, yeah, it is. Okay, time out. So I explained to her what I did, and I explained to her that I didn't get my information from television, that I actually read and did research, and et cetera, et cetera. And I said he's a misogynist. She didn't know what a misogynist was. And anyway, the point is, after her and I were done talking, I said, listen, I'm going to come back, and you're going to make me a promise that you're going to do some homework. And I gave her my email address and said, if you have any questions, let me know. Well, she did send me an email yesterday in the evening. I got it when I got home. And she basically said, thanks for opening my eyes. I had no idea, and it only took me about 5 minutes to figure out that you were right and I was wrong, so I apologize for being a bit edgy with you, which she wasn't, by the way. We can't be afraid to have these discussions, Z. We really, and really one of the messages I want to send to our listeners today is you need to start talking to people outside your sphere of influence. You really have to do that.
I mean, that happens all the time. Do you know how many people I see on Facebook saying, well, everyone I talk to is a, so-and-so supporter. It's like you have 150 friends on Facebook. What do you mean everyone you talk to? What the hell does that mean? And I mean, not only that, but I mean, how many people have you blocked, banned, unfriended because you want to live in your own little petri dish of ignorance on Facebook? And that's really what it's become. I mean, we saw this in the on a grander scale when Romney lost and Karl Rove had his meltdown on Fox News, and Karl Rove was basically saying all my friends on Facebook voted for him. So how is this happening? And Romney's people telling him too. You had said something about polls earlier, which might be a good time to bring that up now, if you'd like.
Go ahead.
Well, no, you had suggested we talk about it. I didn't really know where you were. I mean, I can only guess where you were going with this, but where were you going with this, Tony?
Well, it was just a general comment on why it's so important that we get outside our comfort zone and start talking to people about the truth. I don't care that people are unfriending me. I don't care that I've got a singular gentleman on my Facebook page that is lecturing me about neoliberalism, about how Hillary Clinton is an establishment Democrat, how the DNC has fixed the system. And we can get into all that a little bit later on. The bottom line is he's not a mind I'm going to change. He wants to engage me in a discussion that freaking I don't want to have. And I don't want to, it's not because I can't win it. It's because it's a waste of my time. And that's the point I'm trying to make here is, stop wasting your time with people whose minds you can't change right now. Now listen, there's going to be an entirely different discussion to be had after the Democrats have a nominee, after both of the conventions are over, after we have that 2 or 3 week period between the conventions and the start of the general, and things get really crazy at that point, as you're well aware. You've been doing this a long time. Until then, we have an opportunity, the people that are listening to us right now, to truly educate people as to the truth about a particular candidate, because we only have one presumed nominee at this point, right? Only one. Why would we bash the other two in one way or the other? Because it only helps the one candidate that is the presumptive nominee, and it helps Donald Trump.
Well, and there are a couple facts to look at too. I mean,
bother. Facts? Oh, come on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting really tired. I mean, even on, some of my pages on Facebook, I have obviously my profile, and I've also got the Zombeck page, and you and I both post to the TNZ Talk Facebook page. And, I mean, just as an example, the stuff that happened in Nevada, and then I'm looking through the Facebook feeds, and there's a picture of Barbara Boxer supposedly giving the finger to Bernie supporters, right? That's what they're saying. And they've got this picture of her. And here's the thing, Tony. She is giving the finger, but the picture that they have up, it's her index finger.
Yeah, imagine that.
So, this is going around as if this is true, and that Barbara Boxer is flipping the bird to Bernie supporters, and they show this picture as proof. And if you look at the picture, you can count 4 fingers on the other side of the one that's up. So, I mean, I don't get it. This kind of stuff, I would like to think, sure, okay, there are a lot of morons out there. The world is full of idiots. But do any of you, do you really have to hang out on our Facebook pages? I mean, really? I mean, I'm trying, and I don't know what the hell's going on with Facebook right now, but I'm trying to figure out how to block this dude. Because he's just randomly attacking people on my page, and making absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Well, it has become very troubling. And so let me transition over to my comments to you this morning before we started doing the show about polling. First of all, it's all over the place. Secondly, the media is driving a narrative that Hillary and Trump are tied. And, that may be true in some polls. But, let's just take a deep breath for a moment and understand historically where polls are at this point in an election cycle. And again, doing a little research, independent research from nonpartisan sources. If we were to pick a winner, Mitt Romney would be the president right now. He was actually leading in the polls at this point in the last election cycle. Not by much, but he was. Where's he at now? He's become the chief antagonist of Donald Trump. My point is, and there are many examples. Yeah, and there are many examples of where polls at this point, and at this point, there's always been a presumptive nominee on both sides, with the exception of 2008. And so, I find it ridiculous that the media is driving this narrative and everywhere you turn. And you know it as well as I do. And it does affect the electorate at this point. Now, again, once we have a nominee officially on both sides, once the conventions are over, and I say that because neither convention is going to go well. Just because Donald Trump is the presumptive nominee, there are a lot of issues that need to be resolved, including their platform, which he, of course, does not agree with all of it. And so there are going to be a lot of fights there, including, and you and I both know it, in efforts to still try to unseat him. It's going to happen. On the Democratic side, if Bernie Sanders doesn't temper his tone, and we get to the convention, we're going to get to some audio here in a little bit, but if we get to the convention and Bernie Sanders is still playing grumpy old freaking grandpa, that is going to be a nightmare, not just for the party, but for the country, because we must defeat Donald Trump.
Well, and we've got, that said, too, I know it's not exactly what she said, but to say something to the effect like Hillary said of basically, look, I'm going to be the nominee and essentially California doesn't matter.
Which is not what she said.
I know. And I made that clear. But again, this is the time that people have to be very careful with what they say, how it could be construed, and how people are going to interpret that. Because apparently and that's, hearing that come out of my mouth, it's a ridiculous statement to make, right? Because you've got Donald Trump that says whatever he wants that's untrue, and people point out that it's untrue, and I'm not even going to call them his I was talking to my dad over the weekend. I'm not even going to call them supporters anymore. They're his followers. And his followers don't care. They just don't care what he says, whether or not it's true or not. They either believe it or don't care that it's not true, and actually give him the excuse of saying, well, he's just saying that to win, because other people that are going to vote for him, not me, are morons. When actually, no, you're also a moron.
Well, let's listen. Bernie Sanders was on Meet the Press. I believe he was on Meet the Press. And no, he was with George Stephanopoulos. And he talked about his candidacy and about the road forward. And I want people to pay special attention to the facts that are presented and how Senator Sanders addresses those.
Well, two things. Number one, it is the function of every candidate, Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, to reach out to the American people and make the case why they should be supported. And I have every confidence that if Hillary Clinton is prepared to stand up to the greed of corporate America and Wall Street, is prepared to be really strong on the issue of climate change, support, as I do, attacks on carbon, is prepared to say that the United States of America should join the rest of the industrialized world and guarantee health care to all people, paid family and medical leave, is prepared to say that the grotesque level of income and wealth inequality today in America, where almost all new income and wealth is going to the top 1%, if she is strong on those issues, yeah, I think she will win and win by a large vote. But if she is not, she's going to have her problems. I think the reason we are doing so well is that the American people know that if elected President, Bernie Sanders will stand up, fight for working people, and take on the greed of Wall Street. And
are you going to push for all those positions in the Democratic platform?
We are going to push for the most progressive agenda that we can, which stands with the working people of this country. George, I know the media doesn't talk about it too much, but the middle class of this country has been in decline for 30-plus years, and the gap between the very, very rich and everybody else is getting wider. We have a corrupt campaign finance system which allows billionaires to buy elections. We are going to fight for an agenda in the Democratic platform that recognizes that reality, that makes the Democratic Party the party that stands for working families, not for Wall Street, not for corporate America.
All right. Now, let me just make a quick point. Number one, the media has been all over income inequality. So for Bernie Sanders to claim that that's not true, and I know this because of what I have done for 24 years. It's not like it's not like I'm ignoring certain realities. I'm actually identifying that they exist, and the media does not ignore many of the issues that Senator Sanders brings up. Z, do you remember when we were doing my daily show, and I don't know, we were about a month into the Sanders campaign, and I said, man, he needs to change his message. It just gets old after a while. Do you remember when I said that?
I do.
Same message. A year later. Now, listen, I know it resonates with what you called his followers. I like that, by the way. It's still the same freaking message, Z, and there's no substance to it anymore. It's ringing hollow. Now, I'll agree that he raised more money than Hillary Clinton in April. She's outraised him by boatloads in May to this point. He has $6 million cash on hand, which is literally nothing for a presidential campaign. He can bitch and moan all he wants about special interests and PACs and corporations. But at the end of the day, and you and I had this discussion, it was either last week or late the week before. If he were to win the nomination, how would he fund a general election? He couldn't do it without PACs and corporations. He just couldn't. He wouldn't be able to raise the kind of money it would take to win. And I'm just being a realist. And we can talk about Hillary being the establishment candidate all we want. Politics is about establishment candidates. And you don't change it with one candidacy. And that would be Bernie Sanders. It just doesn't happen like that.
Right. But, I mean, people hope that, I mean, they're hoping. And the thing is, too, is that Sanders supporters aren't necessarily voters, which brings us back to polls again,
Well, we had the discussion about all the people that show up to listen to Bernie talk are obviously not going out to vote for him. And it's astounding. It's absolutely astounding. Well, listen, Hillary Clinton also did some interviewing this weekend. And we can take these in any order we would like, but I think that her talking about Bernie would be important.
The lead for Sanders is an illusion, a little bit.
I'll let others speak to that. I just think that I'm in a much stronger position, have been, and the voters who have turned out and given me 3 million more votes believe that as well.
It does seem he has some specific demands that he would like to see met at the convention if he's not going to be the nominee. Some of them include perhaps getting rid of superdelegates, creating a rule that says, you know what, all primary contests should be open to independents, things like that. Are you okay with those, if that's what it takes to get him on board, to say, okay, we'll do this on the platform. We'll do this going forward. We'll change the rules. We'll change the platform. What do you say?
Well, certainly we're going to talk with him when he's ready to talk and listen to him. And we will take into account what he is asking for. I think that's part of the process.
How about getting rid of superdelegates? Would you be in favor of that?
I think we have to. I'm not going to negotiate with him today on your show. I'm going to say when it's time, I am reaching out to do my part to try to unify the party. I expect him to do the same. I did that when I lost a much closer race to Senator Obama, because I knew that whatever our differences were, just as whatever our differences are between me and Senator Sanders, they pale in comparison to Donald Trump and the Republicans. And I think most of Senator Sanders' supporters understand that as well.
All right. Now, you're right. Her tone, I was a media trainer for 20 years. And her tone is a little, I don't know, stern. Because arrogance is the wrong word. It's a little stern. And she needs to soften the edges. I would agree with that completely. But I did like the way she said, I'm not going to negotiate with him on your show. I thought that was actually a pretty damned responsible answer. Man, wouldn't you love to be in the room when the two of them finally sit down?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Would that not be cool? I would actually mortgage something to do that. I would do just about anything to be in the room when that happens.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I mean, I watch Veep on Sunday nights. And I can't remember the character name or the actor name, but he's the larger guy in it. And someone talked about, like guys do, cutting a particular body part off, and he goes, "Oh, sure. I mean, at this point, they're purely decorative."
Well, there is something to be said for that. I just thought it was fascinating. Well, listen, Bernie Sanders also has made it very clear that not only is he unhappy with the Democratic National Committee, he's unhappy with the chair, who also happens to be a congresswoman from Florida, and that would be Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Well, that was explored on MSNBC yesterday morning, and this is what they had to say on Bernie Sanders' challenge to Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
For more on the Democratic race, I'm joined now by Mo Alethi, Executive Director of Georgetown's Institute of Politics and Public Service, as well as former DNC Communications Director. He also has worked for the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2008. Also with us is Politico's politics reporter, Katie Glick. New information, as you may have heard here. Mo, I'll start with you on this. We're getting word that an interview that was just had with Jake Tapper of CNN with Bernie Sanders, and he was asked about Debbie Wasserman Schultz, which we all know here heads up the DNC. Been a lot of questions about that kumbaya in the party for the candidate, the presumptive nominee that some are saying will be Hillary Clinton. What do you make of him saying this, Mo? Bernie Sanders, in an interview, and I'll just read from my notes here right here, says that he will favor Debbie Wasserman Schultz's primary challenger, Tim Canova. But also he said that if he were elected president, he would want the chair of the DNC not to be her. Mo?
There's clearly not a lot of love lost between Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Bernie Sanders. That's been clear for some time. Two, interesting threat considering her term is up after this election anyway, and she said she's not coming back as DNC chair. So, well, look, I think his point is taken. He's not a big fan of hers, and both the DNC and the Sanders campaign, I think, have both at times looked a little petty in how they've gone back and forth at one another. But at the end of the day, I think what he's trying to do is rally his supporters who are anti-establishment to rail against the DNC, arguing that they've been treated unfairly. I think it's a little bit of he might have some argument to make here and there that they've been treated unfairly, but at the end of the day, he's losing by 3 million votes. That's not a process thing. That's not being treated unfairly. But he's losing in straight votes.
But as you know so well here, Mo, and you've said this, you used to be, a firebomb thrower. Is this a firebomb that he's throwing over the fence here?
Yeah, I mean, he's got to do whatever he can to, he's got a few states left. He wants to keep his people motivated. He's not going to be the nominee, but he wants them to turn out and vote for him. He's got to do something to light a fire. This is a pretty easy target. It's a pretty easy fire to light, but it doesn't change the fact that Hillary Clinton has received 3 million more votes than he has. She is leading in votes. She is leading in delegates. Those are the only two metrics that matter.
Katie, what do you make of this new piece of information that in this interview on CNN that he doesn't appear to be moving towards the center, if you will, for the party, but still being consistent with his criticisms of Debbie Wasserman Schultz?
Well, Hayden, great to be with you. It speaks to the broader challenge that both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party face, which is working toward unity as we get closer and closer to the conventions. This is just one more data point that indicates that, there is absolutely a lot of tension between Bernie Sanders and his very committed supporters and other elements of the Democratic Party. And so this is one more time when we're seeing that really play out in the open. But, both on the Democratic side and the Republican side, we are seeing efforts, maybe broader efforts at party unity, but clearly there are still challenges.
All right, full disclosure here. You
Challenges.
Ready? Full disclosure. I had an exceptional relationship with Terry McAuliffe, who is now the governor in Virginia. He was once the DNC chair. I had an exceptional relationship with Howard Dean, who was the DNC chair, former governor of, New Hampshire?
Vermont, Howard Dean.
Vermont, yeah. And so in comes Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who I worked very hard at building a similar relationship with and was rebuffed. I met her in person twice. Once was in Detroit, once was in Washington, D.C. She couldn't have been cooler towards me. Her communication staff basically boxed me out. So understand where my bias is. I believe she should have recused herself from this race when she made it very clear that she was pro-Hillary, not in word, but in action. There's no question that she is pro-Hillary. And she should have at that point resigned the chairmanship. Now, let's understand how you become chair. You become chair at the appointment of the President of the United States. And although there is a quote-unquote election, the president decides who's the chair of the DNC. Or, if you don't have the presidency at that point, the presumptive leader, and at one point that was Bill Clinton, which is how Terry McAuliffe ended up being DNC chair. The point is, Debbie Wasserman Schultz has done a horrible job, in my opinion, and again, should have left months ago. But Mo Ellerby makes a good point. She is leaving the chairmanship at the end of her term. Her opponent is becoming very well financed. And at this point, this is where the grumpy grandpa comes in. He knows, Bernie Sanders that is, knows she's leaving. Knows she's basically, tried to reinvent herself to be more fair, and she will be. They're changing some of the committee assignments for the convention. She's forced into these positions. Don't get me wrong; she's not doing it on any sense of altruism or for any kind of democracy reasons. She's been forced into it, but he's just being a curmudgeon, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, I really can't say that I blame him. He's been treated unfairly. I mean, I really think he has.
How has he been treated unfairly? That's the question that.
Well, I mean, it started with the debates, Tony. I mean, the debates were scheduled in a way that basically, who the hell was going to watch them? And it was just, we'll have it on a Sunday afternoon when there's a football game going on and there's a holiday on Monday. Let's do it then.
Okay, and both sides agreed to that. Right?
I suppose.
Okay, they're negotiated. And both sides agree to it. So after the fact, because it didn't work out, because they didn't get enough eyes, all of a sudden, it's a problem. Or we can, take the other view, which is, hey, listen, we wanted to debate, and so we hated the way they were doing it and the time they were doing it, but at the end of the day, we wanted the debate, so we did it. All right, well, so be it, but it's a negotiation. And you say, no, I refuse to do it on a Sunday afternoon. If you want the debate, It has to be in prime time. It wasn't like they wouldn't get coverage. It wasn't like they wouldn't find a network. They would. And so the Sanders campaign, again, can bitch and moan about it all they want. They agreed to do it.
Well, and it's like them bitching about the Nevada thing. I mean, the rules were clear. They didn't do what they needed to do. And but then again, on the other side, too, there's, did Barbara Boxer flip the bird? Did people throw chairs? And again, we're getting inundated with contradicting stories, and nobody seems to actually come out and say, no, this is what really happened. I haven't seen any of them.
All right. So yesterday morning, and I'll tell you after the show who I talked to, but I reached out to somebody well-placed in the Washington, D.C. political scene. Well-placed, not necessarily well-known, but well-placed. And the Clinton campaign has sent a very clear bullet to their supporters in a lot of different avenues that they must soften, and they have, their tone about Bernie Sanders and about the race, that they just need to keep their mouths shut. I mean, there's always going to be that radical fringe, right, on both sides, that's going to do whatever they want to do anyway. They're renegades. They're going to say what they want and do what they want. But I've noticed, and after I talked to him yesterday and then went to the 8 or 10 sites that I go to, including some political boards that are not publicly accessible necessarily. And there is a radical reduction in Hillary people being rabid. And so I believe what he told me. At the same time, and I'm not even going to call them the Bernie bros. I like the followers. I like the way you characterize that. A, it's more friendly, but B, I think B, it's more accurate. And I think about the reality of how disappointing this must be for them, right, Z? To work so hard. And a lot of these people started a year before Senator Sanders even announced he was going to run. And so this has got to be really hard for them. I mean, I've been through it. I was through it. I put all my heart and soul into John Kerry's campaign. I was a surrogate. I was a lackey on the radio, and I don't mean that in a negative way. The Swift boat thing was something that I actually was on at the beginning of because it started at the convention in Boston, as you're well aware, and I was there. I wish I would have known you then. But I was there, and I saw what happened. I saw the wave of negativity starting to build. I was on conference calls, communication conference calls with the campaign who refused to rebuff what they were doing. And you'll remember that, right? The Kerry campaign just wouldn't respond to it.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I put everything I had into that campaign. And when he lost, I was freaking devastated. Absolutely, like somebody ripped my heart out. So well, I get it.
But you didn't go around saying, we were cheated.
No, I didn't. And I'm not one of those people anyway. Maybe this is a good time to play a little bit of Jon Oliver that I pulled this morning that you turned me on to.
Okay.
Presidential primaries and caucuses. The electoral foreplay that we've been engaging in since February, which will culminate in the mass balloon ejaculations of this summer's conventions. Both parties nearly have their nominee, and it looks like America will be choosing between Donald Trump, America's walking, talking brush fire, and, in all likelihood, Hillary Clinton, the woman who exhibits either too much or too little of every human quality, depending on who you ask. Which is not to say that the Democrats' primary process is over. As we saw in Nevada last weekend, it is very much still raging.
This is ridiculous. This whole process has been screwed up.
Emotions ran high at the Democratic State Convention in Las Vegas after Hillary Clinton took more delegate wins than Bernie Sanders Saturday.
Holy shit! Usually when a crowd is that angry in Vegas, it's because they just realised there are no elephants in Cirque du Soleil, just a bunch of terrifying nightmare perverts. But it is not just Nevada that has caused frustration over how delegates are assigned. Throughout this process, thanks to an odd quirk in the Democrat system, there have been news reports like this.
We're putting up right now a graphic. Bernie Sanders wins 56 to 44% in Wyoming. The delegates rewarded Hillary Clinton 11, Bernie Sanders 7. Why does the Democratic Party even have voting booths?
No, why?
This system is so rigged.
Oh, please. We have voting booths for the same reason that Friendly's has restaurant booths, so that we can have relative privacy while we choose from a deeply unappetizing menu. And it is not just the Democrats. When Donald Trump won Louisiana, beating Ted Cruz by more than 3%, he was upset to discover that Cruz could potentially get as many as 10 more delegates, or as he put it,
I end up winning Louisiana, and then when everything is done, I find out I get less delegates than this guy that got his ass kicked, okay? Give me a break.
The thing is, I get why he's annoyed, and there is no clearer piece of evidence that our system is broken, no more thoroughly dead canary in the coal mine than when Donald Trump is actually making sense. Because when you see results like that, the process does feel counterintuitive. So tonight we thought we'd ask, why do the parties operate this way? Because for many years they didn't. Until 50 years ago, most states didn't even have primaries, and candidates were chosen by party insiders at the convention. But in 1968, that system broke down when the Democratic Party leadership picked Hubert Humphrey, despite the fact he hadn't even competed in a primary. Democrats were pissed off, and the convention was chaos.
There's a lot of pushing. The man being pushed, watch it, they're going to knock that over. The man is a delegate. They're asking for silence. There's a priest in here, dozens of reporters, and the man who got involved in it all is very calmly smoking a cigarette.
Oh, he's not just smoking any cigarette, he's smoking a Chesterfield. Chesterfield! Once you've turned democracy into a riot, you deserve a Chesterfield! Now, in the years that followed that mess, both parties reformed their processes to give their rank-and-file members more of a say. But many of the details were left up to state leaders, which might help explain why we have such an erratic clusterfuck every 4 years. Almost every part of this process is difficult to defend. For instance, while most states hold primaries, in all of these states, one or both parties hold caucuses, which, as I'm sure you know, is a process whereby you typically have to turn up to a certain place at a certain time, like a school gymnasium at 7 p.m, attend a party meeting that can take hours, and then vote, which can be prohibitive, because if you work at night, or you can't get a babysitter, or you don't have transportation, you can be frozen out. And that is probably why, while Republican primary turnout in 2012 was 19%, their turnout for caucuses averaged just 3%, which is terrible. If you have 3% turnout at an orgy, it's basically just you masturbating next to a table full of uneaten snacks. So, generally, you are lucky if you live in a state that has a primary, unless you're a Democrat in Washington state, where things get a little more complicated.
In Washington state, we have both caucuses.
Can anybody else speak up on their candidate?
And presidential primaries, where you actually cast a ballot in private. But Democrats have never liked the primary, and they've ignored it from day one.
It's true. The Democrats' presidential primary in Washington doesn't count. They have one, and it's this Tuesday, but all the pledged delegates were decided at their caucus months ago. So, you know your awful friend who says he doesn't vote because he doesn't feel like his vote counts? If he's a Washington Democrat participating in the primary, he's right.
I love that.
Jon
how
Oliver.
How do you not love that guy, Z?
I do. I absolutely do. Jon Oliver is probably... I mean, the thing is, too, is that the format of his show is he gets to do long-form journalism on one topic for almost a full half hour, if not, 20 minutes, because he's got 10 minutes of other extraneous stuff that he wants to cover. But they research this stuff, they look into it, they get their facts, and then they make some really good jokes about it,
Well, the stuff about Washington State is just a scream. But it's the reality. And he does make the point, as I made earlier, states are the ones that really drive the rules. It has really not a whole lot to do with the national parties, as people believe. And so, again, I don't know if you guys have an open primary or a closed primary in Massachusetts, but in Michigan, up until this year, we did have an open primary, which meant that anybody could vote for anybody they wanted to, whether it was Republican or Democrat. Unfortunately, our legislature, which is controlled starkly by Republicans, changed the system to the closed primary, where you had to vote in the party in which you are registered. What's it like in Massachusetts?
It's closed.
Okay. And so that's something that happens at the state level. And I guess Bernie people just don't want to hear that. And that's unfortunate. We don't have time to get into the Mark Cuban stuff today. We'll do that tomorrow. But he had some interesting things to say, both about Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. I don't know if you saw some of the headlines over the weekend. Mark Cuban, who is an entrepreneur, owns the Dallas Mavericks, lots of other businesses, a multi-billionaire, said that he would be willing to serve as a vice president for either Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, although his criticism of Donald Trump is much harsher.
Which I just don't get. I mean,
he explains it. He does explain it. We'll get to the audio tomorrow. I don't want to put words in his mouth. We'll get to this tomorrow because we just don't have time today. But it was interesting because they both have said, both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump have said, they would not necessarily rule a Mark Cuban out as a potential running mate, which I found interesting. With all that said, Z, in the small amount of time that we have left, let me just, because, I like the way you frame issues. I really do. And I enjoy reading you. I enjoy listening to you. So I'm just going to throw this out at you. And for those Bernie supporters that are listening to us right now that are really rabidly in his corner, if you were in a small group and you were asked to speak to them about the importance of what will happen in November, what would you say to them? Not necessarily change their mind, but perhaps get them to think in the right direction.
Well, I mean, it's obvious. I mean, it's Trump. I mean, and I know the argument sounds like the lesser of two evils, but Trump and the Republican Party, I believe, are a huge danger to this country.
Now, I can't disagree with anything you've said. Interestingly, I had posted a story on Friday. Madeleine Albright had given a commencement address, and she, of course, is not everybody's favorite person these days because of a comment she made about not supporting Hillary, that there's a special place in hell for women that don't support Hillary Clinton. Well, she gave a commencement address at Annenberg College, which is very, very conservative. And let's just say there were lots of protests. Let's just say that many in the audience before she spoke were wearing buttons that were, not very complimentary. There was a group of faculty and students that met with her before she spoke, and they were very clear that they were not happy that she was there. By the time she was done delivering her address, and she got a very tepid response when they introduced her, she had a standing ovation when she left. And there was a reason for that. And if those are interested, they can find it on both my Facebook page, the TNZ Facebook page. But basically what she said was, an open mind is an only mind. And that we need to put ourselves in places of discomfort in order to realize that as much as we think, especially at that age, Z, that we know everything, We don't.
Well, and this speaks to the protests of, speakers that are coming in and students protesting because they simply don't want to hear what they have to say. And there's nothing more ludicrous to me than that. Than students protesting about the speakers that are coming because they don't want to hear what they have to say. And that's the point of education, is that you listen to things that make you uncomfortable. If you want to protest it, fine. If you want to voice your opinion about it, fine. But don't bar someone from coming because you simply don't want to hear what they have to say.
Well, a little over, maybe a year and a half ago now, my alma mater had invited Ben Carson to speak. And a handful of my current fraternity brothers, so that would be active members that are at the college now, contacted me and wanted me to protest or to organize a protest to ban Ben Carson from coming. And when I wrote them back and said, no, you need to do the exact opposite. You need to encourage people to go. You do not need to protest. Certainly there's nothing wrong with holding a sign or whatever. But you all need to go, you all need to listen, and you all need to understand why you have to fight against what he has to say. But in order to do that, you have to hear what he says first. And they weren't happy with me. Anyway, we're out of time. So, Z, how can people get more info on TNZ Talk?
Well, tnztalk.com. That's and, as in A-N-D, tnztalk.com. Find us, friend us, support us. Please support us. We're getting to a crucial time where we kind of have to make some decisions around here. So you can find our Patreon page under support. Just go to tnztalk.com and click on support. Also, don't forget to friend us and follow us on Twitter and Facebook.
Absolutely. All right, that'll do it for us today. We ran a little bit over, but that's okay. It's who we are. I'm Tony Trupiano for Richard Zombeck. Have a great day. We'll be back with our next episode tomorrow. In the meantime, and as always, we ask that you be well.
Oh yeah, can you feel it? Just over the credits, just riffing now. Words and chords. Not the poetry and the real thing, but not bad for an ad-lib. Not good, but... It's not long enough, so just do a little bit more, and that's nearly done. That's the final credit there. That's the end.